The sun had barely risen over the quiet village of Eldrin's Hollow when Kairos Valen stepped into the open fields, wooden sword in hand, practicing strikes he had repeated 1,000 times. Each swing carried both determination and frustration. The soft morning light glinted off the blade as he pivoted, parried, and thrust again, sweat rolling down his brow. He thought of his father's last words: "Strength alone will not protect those you love. Discipline, will, and heart, these are the true weapons of a warrior." Life had been peaceful in Eldrin's Hollow, with children laughing, merchants calling out wares, and neighbors greeting each other warmly. But Kairos's heart carried unease. There were rumors of wandering bands and warlords taking villages by force, and a sense of restlessness stirred in him. "I must grow stronger. No one else can protect my family if I fail," he reminded himself, gripping the hilt tighter. Then, without warning, shadows fell across the village like a dark tide. Figures clad in black armor emerged from the tree line, moving with eerie precision. The villagers' laughter turned to screams as fire and chaos swept through the streets. Kairos's parents rushed to defend their home, their movements desperate yet disciplined. Kairos watched, horrified, as the invaders cut through defenders like a blade through paper. He tried to intervene but was knocked aside, tumbling to the dirt as flames consumed everything he loved. Pain and rage surged through him. Blood streamed from a shallow cut on his arm, and dust filled his lungs, but his eyes burned with a single promise: "I will rise, I will become stronger, and I will not let this happen to anyone ever again." Kairos fled into the surrounding forest, the village behind him burning in a brilliant inferno. Days passed as he navigated the wilderness, surviving on wild plants and his own wits. Hunger gnawed at him, but his resolve never faltered. Every step was fueled by memory: the laughter of his sister, the warmth of his mother's embrace, the stern guidance of his father. Eventually, Kairos arrived at the base of the Obsidian Gate, a towering complex of black stone, etched with carvings that pulsed faintly with mystical energy. Trainees moved across its grounds, their auras visible in faint, shimmering glows. Warriors sparred, practiced techniques, and tested the limits of their bodies. Kairos's pulse quickened. This is where I'll become strong enough to protect anyone I care about," he whispered, awe mingling with determination. He had barely stepped forward when a feral growl echoed from the shadows. An obsidian wolf, larger than any natural beast, with molten gold eyes, emerged from the brush. Its teeth glinted as it advanced, muscles rippling under sleek, dark fur. Kairos froze, but instinct took over. Just as the wolf lunged, a blur of motion intercepted it. Leora Sin appeared, dagger in hand, moving with deadly precision. Within seconds, she incapacitated the beast with a swift strike, never breaking her focus. "Stay behind me if you want to survive," she said, her voice sharp but not unkind. Kairos hesitated, then nodded, realizing that survival required more than raw strength, it required strategy and trust. The two navigated the Obsidian Gate together, facing ambushes set by senior trainees and natural predators alike. Through teamwork, they survived. At day's end, bruised, bloodied, and exhausted, they reached a high vantage point overlooking the peak of the gate. Kairos exhaled, a mixture of relief and exhilaration flooding him. "You're impressive," he admitted, almost reluctantly. "Don't get used to compliments," Leora replied, a faint smirk crossing her face. Still, in her eyes, Kairos caught a hint of respect. This is only the beginning, he thought, staring at the distant summit where countless warriors had trained and ascended, unaware of the dangers lurking both within and beyond the gate. The following morning, Kairos approached the central courtyard of Obsidian Gate, where Arahan Vale, a tall figure with a composed yet imposing presence, awaited. His long silver hair flowed like liquid metal, and his eyes held a depth that seemed to pierce the very soul. Trainees of all ranks moved around the grounds, their limit breaks glowing faintly, a testament to their progress. "You there," Arahan's voice rang out, carrying effortlessly over the courtyard. "Who are you, and why have you come to Obsidian Gate?" Kairos stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. "My name is Kairos Valen. I wish to train, to grow stronger, to never fail again." Arahan's gaze swept over him like a measuring scale. He noticed the fire in Kairos's eyes, the tension in his muscles, and the faint aura of latent energy barely contained. "Very well, but strength alone is not enough. Here, you will learn discipline, mastery, and the cost of power." Kairos nodded, understanding that every word carried weight. Training began immediately. Days blurred into nights as he pushed himself through grueling physical exercises, spiritual conditioning, and limit break techniques that bent the body and mind beyond natural limits. Each session left him bleeding, exhausted, and frustrated, but also growing. Leora trained alongside him, demonstrating skills that combined stealth, agility, and precision. While Kairos focused on raw power and void resonance awakening, Leora's training emphasized control, strategy, and the silent anticipation of danger. Their methods were different, but together they complemented each other, forming a bond of mutual respect. During one particularly brutal session, Kairos faced a sparring match against a senior trainee named Ren Thalos. Ren's golden hair gleamed in the sun as he approached, confident and unyielding. Their first clash was chaotic, a storm of strikes, blocks, and limit break sparks that lit up the training ground. Kairos struggled to keep up, his body pushed to the brink. "You're fast," Kairos admitted mid-fight, sweat dripping down his face. "Fast isn't enough," Ren replied, eyes narrowed. "You need control, focus, and cunning." The fight continued, each of them testing the other's limits. Kairos barely survived the encounter, activating his first true limit break to evade a deadly strike. Though he lost the sparring match, he felt a surge of growth, understanding that raw power was only part of the equation. Meanwhile, whispers of the Shadow Sect reached the outer gates. These rogue warriors, known for stealing forbidden techniques, had been sighted in nearby territories. Kairos and Leora learned that their initial attacks were only the beginning. The Shadow Sect sought ancient Ascension relics capable of amplifying limit breaks unnaturally. Arahan cautioned them, "The Shadow Sect is unlike any threat you've faced. They do not fight for honor or strength, they fight for dominance. Beware their cunning." Kairos, though still raw in skill, felt a growing sense of purpose. He trained relentlessly, learning to channel energy into his limit breaks with greater efficiency. Leora perfected her Phantom Veil technique, allowing her to vanish almost completely, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. Together, they patrolled the gate, intercepting small incursions by Shadow Sect operatives and gaining experience in real combat situations. The Silver Tier Ascension exam approached, a trial that tested combat ability, strategy, and spiritual resilience. Trainees were sent into the gauntlet, a labyrinth filled with illusions, monsters, and deadly traps. Kairos's first trial pushed him to the edge. He faced manifestations of his family's massacre, each vision threatening to overwhelm him with despair. Leora stayed close, her presence grounding him, guiding him to focus on the present and channel his rage into determination. By the end of the gauntlet, Kairos had not only survived but evolved. His limit breaks became sharper, faster, and more controlled. He emerged with a deeper understanding. True strength required harmony of body, mind, and spirit, not just raw energy. Leora's Phantom Veil allowed them to bypass deadly traps and ambushes, proving her indispensable in high-risk operations. Ren, observing Kairos's survival, approached afterward. "You've grown, faster than I expected. But don't think this is enough." Kairos clenched his fists. "I know, I'll become stronger, no matter what it takes." The Silver Tier Ascension ceremony marked their official promotion, but the victory was shadowed by foreboding. In the darkness beyond the gate, a figure cloaked in black watched their success, a cruel smile spreading across his face. He whispered to himself, "The boy rises, but the game has only begun. Soon, all will fall into my shadow." Kairos, unaware of the observer, stood atop the gate's peak alongside Leora and Ren, gazing at the horizon. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with rivalries, challenges, and threats far greater than any he had faced. Yet, for the first time, he felt ready. Ready to face the unknown, ready to confront enemies, ready to ascend beyond limits. Weeks passed at Obsidian Gate, each day a relentless cycle of training, strategy lessons, and survival exercises. Kairos's muscles ached constantly, and every morning greeted him with bruises and the metallic scent of sweat. Yet with every pain, he felt a part of himself growing stronger, not just physically but spiritually. Arahan Vale watched him silently, his piercing gaze noting even the smallest improvement. "Strength without vision is a wasted flame," Arahan said one evening as Kairos meditated atop the gate's western tower. "Your limit breaks are growing, but you must learn control. Only by mastering your spirit can you surpass the Silver Tier limits." Kairos nodded, focusing his breath. He felt the raw energy of his limit breaks pulsing like a storm within his body. Closing his eyes, he imagined every strike, every dodge, every battle he had survived. Slowly, the chaotic energy began to harmonize with his heartbeat. For the first time, his attacks felt like an extension of himself rather than an uncontrolled force. Leora, watching nearby, approached silently. You're improving faster than I expected, she said. Her tone was calm but carried a hint of admiration. But speed alone won't save you. You need foresight, patience, and the ability to read your opponent. Otherwise, you'll burn out before the real battle begins. Their first mission outside the gate came sooner than expected. Shadow Sect scouts had been spotted in the neighboring territory of Draven Hills, attempting to steal a minor ascension relic. Kairos and Leora were tasked with intercepting them. The journey through rugged mountains and dense forests tested their endurance, survival instincts, and teamwork. Kairos struggled with controlling his limit breaks in the wild, where terrain, visibility, and fatigue created constant hazards. The first encounter was brutal. Shadow Sect operatives ambushed them in a narrow canyon. Kairos's initial strikes were powerful but unfocused, leaving him open to counterattacks. Leora, moving like a shadow, disabled two assailants silently, giving Kairos space to adapt. Slowly, he learned to integrate his limit break with strategic movement rather than relying on raw force alone. By the end of the skirmish, they had subdued the intruders and retrieved the relic, but Kairos was left with bruises, deep scratches, and a growing understanding of how much further he had to go. Meanwhile, Renthalos continued his own relentless training, pushing himself to match and surpass Kairos. The rivalry between them grew more pronounced, not born of hatred, but of mutual respect tempered with ambition. Their occasional clashes on the training grounds became spectacles, drawing attention from senior disciples. Each duel honed their skills, tested their limit breaks, and expanded their understanding of strategy. Back at Obsidian Gate, Arahan assigned more complex exercises. One involved navigating the labyrinth of echoes, a magical maze filled with illusions, traps, and guardian spirits. Trainees who failed risked injury or severe spiritual backlash. Kairos and Leora entered together, their synergy improving with every challenge. Within the labyrinth, Kairos faced illusions of his destroyed village, reliving the fear, grief, and helplessness he had felt that night. Leora's presence anchored him, reminding him that he had grown stronger and was not alone. Emerging victorious, Kairos earned the first official recognition of his growing skill. His limit breaks had become sharper, faster, and more controlled. Leora's Phantom Veil technique now allowed her to momentarily move between shadows, striking before opponents could react. Together, they became a formidable team, capable of facing higher-level threats. However, the Shadow Sect's influence grew. Reports of their incursions became more frequent, targeting not only relics but also vulnerable Ascension Gate outposts. Whispers spoke of a mysterious leader, known only as Veyros Malvin, who sought to destabilize the Ascension hierarchy entirely. The name alone sent shivers through the ranks of even seasoned warriors. Kairos, Leora, and Ren found themselves drawn into a web of intrigue. Minor skirmishes revealed the Shadow Sect's tactics, stolen limit break techniques, forbidden relics, and the ability to manipulate spiritual energy in ways Kairos had never seen. It became clear that ordinary training and silver-tier strength would be insufficient to counter the looming threat. Amid these challenges, personal growth intertwined with conflict. Kairos struggled with doubt. Am I strong enough? Will I fail again? Leora, equally tested, found herself balancing her desire for independence with the need for trust. Ren, torn between ambition and the realization that alliances could be as important as rivalries, began to see Kairos in a new light. The culmination of these early arcs led to the Silver Ascension Tournament, a rigorous trial designed to showcase the strength and skill of the Gate's trainees. Kairos, Leora, and Ren all entered, facing a series of combat scenarios, strategic puzzles, and team challenges. Each test pushed them to new heights, revealing strengths and weaknesses alike. Kairos emerged from the tournament with recognition not only for his growing power but also for his strategic adaptability. Yet, in the shadows, unseen by all, Veyros Malvin observed. His intent was clear. The boy was rising, but he would not be allowed to ascend unchallenged. The Shadow Sect's plan had many layers, and the first moves against Obsidian Gate were only beginning. Kairos stood atop the gate once more, wind whipping against his face, looking at the horizon with a mixture of determination and foreboding. This is only the beginning," he whispered. The path ahead promised challenges, battles, and mysteries that would test him in ways he had never imagined. The days following the Silver Tier tournament brought no rest. Obsidian Gate assigned Kairos and Leora a new mission, to retrieve a hidden Ascension relic, the Crystal of Veiled Dawn, set to amplify the spiritual energy of its wielder. The relic was located deep within the Forsaken Caverns, a labyrinth of twisting tunnels and glowing crystals that distorted perception and drained energy. Kairos adjusted the straps on his gear, feeling the familiar weight of his sword and the hum of latent energy within him. Leora checked her phantom veil daggers, her expression calm but alert. "Remember," she said softly, "this isn't just about fighting. The caverns play tricks on your mind. Focus, and trust your instincts." As they descended into the caverns, shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls. Whispers echoed through the crystalline passages, each sound seeming to come from a different direction. Kyrus's limit break surged instinctively, illuminating the path ahead with faint energy pulses. Leora's form shimmered as she moved through shadows, scouting ahead. The first guardian appeared, a towering elemental formed from crystal shards, eyes glowing with a cold light. Its attacks were precise, each strike sending shards spiraling toward Kyrus with deadly speed. He reacted instinctively, activating his limit break in a controlled burst, slashing through shards midair. Leora struck from the shadows, her daggers piercing the elemental's weak points. Together, they brought it down after a grueling struggle. Further in, illusions of Eldrin's Hollow appeared, twisted and burning. Kyrus clenched his teeth, forcing himself to ignore the visions. "This is not my village, not real. Focus." Leora's hand on his shoulder grounded him, anchoring him to reality. Step by step, they navigated the maze of illusions, learning to combine Kyrus's raw strength and energy control with Leora's stealth and precision. Finally, they reached the chamber holding the crystal of veiled dawn, suspended above a pedestal of black stone. Shadow Sect operatives were already there, attempting to siphon its energy. Kyrus's heart pounded. This was his first direct confrontation with multiple enemies at once. The fight was relentless. Energy blasts, acrobatics, and limit breaks collided in a storm of power. Kyrus pushed beyond his previous limits, channeling energy into precise strikes that disabled his foes one by one. With a final surge, the last operative fell, and the crystal's glow bathed the chamber in radiant light. Kyrus extended his hand, feeling the relic's energy pulse in harmony with his limit break. A sense of clarity washed over him. He could feel his body, mind, and spirit moving as one. Leora nodded approvingly, acknowledging his growth. Returning to Obsidian Gate, they reported their success to Arahan Vale. "You have done well," he said, his eyes assessing their energy signatures. "But relics alone will not save you. Mastery is earned, not found. You must continue to push beyond your limits." The days that followed were filled with escalating challenges. Shadow Sect incursions increased in frequency and audacity, testing the gate's defenses and Kyrus's resolve. Each encounter forced him to refine his skills, plan strategically, and learn from his mistakes. Ren, observing from a distance, began to see Kyrus as a rival not merely in strength but in ingenuity and growth. Amidst these trials, Kyrus experienced moments of introspection. He meditated on the losses from his village, the friends he had yet to make, and the power he sought not for glory but to protect those who could not defend themselves. Leora often joined him, silently teaching lessons in patience, perception, and the subtle art of exploiting one's enemy. By the time the next ascension checkpoint approached, Kyrus had transformed from a raw, angry youth into a disciplined warrior capable of controlling his limit break, anticipating enemy strategies, and working seamlessly with Leora. The checkpoint, a simulated battlefield of illusions, traps, and spiritual energy fluctuations, tested every skill he had learned. He emerged victorious, earning the recognition of gate masters and solidifying his place among the most promising silver-tier trainees. Yet, even as he celebrated these victories, a shadow watched from afar. Veyros Malvin, cloaked in darkness, observed Kyrus's rise with a calculating grin. "Interesting, very interesting," he whispered. "The boy grows strong, but strength alone will not prepare him for the storm to come." Kyrus, unaware of the eyes that followed him, looked toward the horizon from the gate's tallest spire. The wind tugged at his hair, carrying the scent of distant lands and unknown challenges. He clenched his fists, resolve burning brighter than ever. "No matter what comes, I will not falter. I will rise beyond every limit." The victory in the Forsaken Caverns earned Kyrus and Leora recognition among the gate's masters, but it also drew unwanted attention. Shadow Sect raids became more coordinated and daring. Reports of stolen relics, missing patrols, and ambushed caravans reached Obsidian Gate daily. Arahan Vale summoned Kyrus and Leora for a briefing. "You have grown, both of you," Arahan said, his voice calm but commanding. "But the Shadow Sect adapts. Each encounter will test not just strength, but wisdom and restraint. You must anticipate, plan, and strike precisely. This is no longer training, it is preparation for survival." Kyrus nodded, determination burning in his eyes. Leora, standing silently beside him, adjusted her daggers. "We've handled scouts before," she said. "This time will be no different." Their first assignment under Arahan's guidance was reconnaissance of the Ember Ridge, a mountainous border region where Shadow Sect operatives were rumored to have set up a forward base. The journey was treacherous, with sheer cliffs, jagged rocks, and sudden storms that tested endurance. Yet, the most dangerous threats were not the terrain, but the enemies lying in wait. In the narrow passes of Ember Ridge, Kairos and Leora encountered their first major Shadow Sect strike team. These operatives were faster, stronger, and more cunning than the previous scouts. The fight erupted with precision strikes and limit break bursts lighting the ridge in flashes of energy. Kairos's movements were more controlled now. He blocked, dodged, and countered with a fluidity he had not possessed months before. Leora struck from the shadows, her phantom veil allowing her to appear and vanish, dismantling enemies silently. Together, they formed a deadly tandem, covering each other's blind spots and exploiting weaknesses. One operative attempted to ambush Kairos from above, only to be met with a countered limit break surge that sent him crashing into the rocks below. As the battle concluded, Kairos realized something unsettling. The Shadow Sect had been observing them, learning their tactics. Each encounter seemed designed to test their skills and adaptability, almost as if a teacher with dark intentions was orchestrating every move. After returning to Obsidian Gate, Kairos's growth was assessed. Arahan Vale's eyes softened with rare approval. "Your limit breaks are evolving. But strength alone will not defeat the Shadow Sect. You must understand their motives, anticipate their moves, and grow beyond instinct. The path to Gold Tier will demand more than raw power." It was during a quiet evening atop the gate's spire that Kairos encountered a fellow trainee for the first time outside of official assignments. Arahan had arranged for an ally named Arindor Vale, a calm strategist with a specialty in spiritual barriers and defensive limit breaks. Unlike Leora's offense-oriented style or Kairos's raw energy, Arindor emphasized protection, foresight, and tactical positioning. "You rely too heavily on strength," Arindor said quietly, observing Kairos spar with Leora. "Strategy wins wars, not just power. Learn to control the battlefield, anticipate the enemy, and you will survive challenges beyond Silver Tier." Kairos listened intently. Each word added another layer to his understanding. He had relied on rage, determination, and instinct, but now he began to see the value of planning, foresight, and teamwork. With Leora and Arindor, he began training sequences that combined offense, defense, and strategic positioning, a trio capable of handling increasingly complex threats. The Shadow Sect, however, was not idle. Their incursions escalated to full-scale attacks on gate supply caravans and smaller outposts. Kairos and his allies faced ambushes where every move, every limit break, had to be calculated. These battles were not just tests of strength but of patience, timing, and precision. By adapting and learning from each encounter, Kairos's limit break control became sharper, faster, and more versatile. One evening, after repelling a particularly dangerous Shadow Sect assault, Kairos stood overlooking the horizon, the wind carrying the scent of distant forests and mountains. He clenched his fists, the energy of his limit break thrumming beneath his skin. "No matter how strong they are, I will be stronger. I will rise beyond every limit." But in the darkness, unseen and untouchable, Veyros Malvin observed. A cruel smile crossed his face as he whispered to himself, "The boy learns, but the storm approaches. Soon, all will kneel before the shadow, and his rise will be tested like never before." Weeks of relentless patrols, skirmishes, and strategic training hardened Kairos and his allies. The Gate Masters, satisfied with their progress, assigned them a high-priority mission, to retrieve the Obsidian Shard of Etherian, an ancient relic rumored to grant insight into controlling spiritual energy at a higher level. The shard was hidden in the Twilight Abyss, a massive canyon where the sunlight barely reached the floor and ethereal storms distorted perception. Kairos adjusted his sword strap and focused his energy, sensing the shard's faint aura deep below. Leora moved silently at his side, her phantom veil tuned to detect hidden traps. Arindor, observing from a high vantage point, used his spiritual barrier techniques to scout potential ambush points. "Stay aware," he warned. "The abyss is not just dangerous for its terrain. It will test your mind as much as your body." The descent into the Twilight Abyss was treacherous. Jagged cliffs, sudden gusts, and floating rock formations challenged their balance and coordination. Every misstep could be fatal. As they navigated the canyon, illusions manifested, playing on fears and regrets. Kairos was confronted with spectral images of his destroyed village, of loved ones he could not save. He gritted his teeth, channeling his limit break into controlled bursts that cut through the illusions, each strike a reaffirmation of his purpose. At the bottom of the canyon, the obsidian shard of Etherian lay guarded by an elemental creature of pure spiritual energy, its form constantly shifting and refracting light. Kairos, Leora, and Arindor coordinated their attacks. Kairos engaged directly, combining offensive limit breaks with precise control. Leora struck from the shadows, exploiting openings and distractions. Arindor's barriers absorbed the elemental's most destructive attacks, giving his allies critical moments to strike. After a grueling battle, Kairos landed a decisive strike, channeling his limit break into a concentrated pulse that shattered the elemental's core. The shard hovered before them, radiating energy that felt alive, almost sentient. Kairos reached out and touched it, and in that instant, he felt an expansion of his spiritual perception, his limit break now moving in harmony with his body and mind in ways previously impossible. Returning to Obsidian Gate with the shard, they were hailed as heroes among the trainees. Yet Arahan Vale reminded them of the path ahead. Power grows, but so do the shadows that seek it. Your limit breaks have evolved, but gold-tier trials will demand far more: mental acuity, strategic foresight, and unwavering resolve. You are not yet prepared for what lies beyond the gate. As the days passed, Kairos's mastery continued to expand. He trained relentlessly, refining his limit breaks for precision and efficiency. Leora experimented with hybrid techniques, combining stealth with energy bursts. Arindor emphasized team coordination, teaching Kairos to read opponents' movements and predict attacks before they occurred. The trio's synergy became legendary among silver-tier trainees. Meanwhile, the Shadow Sect's activity escalated. Reports indicated that operatives had begun targeting minor ascension gates, searching for relics and knowledge. It became clear that the sect was not just testing Kairos, they were orchestrating a campaign, a broader strategy that threatened the balance of ascension territories. One night, Kairos and Leora trained alone on a cliffside overlooking the gate. The stars reflected in the distant rivers below, and the wind whispered through the peaks. "Do you ever wonder why they attack?" Kairos asked. Leora's eyes, shadowed in the moonlight, reflected determination. "It doesn't matter why. What matters is that we're ready for them." The night air thrummed with tension, the quiet a temporary reprieve before the storm. Kairos clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of his limit break within him. Every trial, every fight, every loss and victory had led to this moment. He was no longer the boy who fled a burning village. He was a warrior in his own right, ready to rise beyond limits yet unaware of the darkness that watched from afar. Veiros Malvin, the Shadow Sect's mysterious leader, observed silently from a hidden cliff across the valley. "Interesting," he whispered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "The boy grows stronger, but growth will only make his fall more spectacular. Soon, all will bow to the shadow." Kairos looked at the horizon, the first hints of dawn illuminating distant mountains. "No matter what comes, I will not falter. I will rise beyond every limit." The words were a vow, an oath, and a promise, one that would carry him through trials that had yet to come. The months of relentless training, missions, and battles had honed Kairos into a formidable silver-tier warrior. His limit breaks were no longer raw bursts of energy, they flowed with precision, harmonized with his instincts, and adapted to every situation. Leora's phantom veil had evolved, allowing her to strike with unprecedented speed while remaining nearly invisible. Arindor's defensive strategies provided a perfect balance, creating a trio that could face nearly any threat the silver tier posed. Yet the final test of silver tier mastery came unexpectedly. Shadow Sect forces launched a coordinated assault on Obsidian Gate's northern perimeter, aiming to seize multiple relics and destabilize the gate's defenses. Alarms rang through the fortress, and trainees and masters scrambled to respond. Kairos, Leora, and Arindor were deployed immediately to repel the attackers. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Shadow Sect operatives emerged from the shadows, using stolen relics to amplify their powers. The air crackled with energy, limit breaks colliding in bursts of light and shockwaves that shattered the surrounding terrain. Kairos led the charge, his limit breaks moving in perfect synchronization with his strikes. Each enemy was analyzed, weaknesses identified, and attacks executed with ruthless precision. Leora darted between shadows, dismantling enemies silently, while Arindor created barriers to shield allies and redirect incoming energy attacks. The trio's coordination was flawless, a culmination of months of training, trials, and battlefield experience. Kairos felt the surge of power within him, not as anger or desperation, but as a focused tool of strategy and strength. During the battle, Kairos encountered a Shadow Sect lieutenant wielding a corrupted relic capable of nullifying limit breaks. The fight pushed him to the edge, forcing him to rely not just on strength, but on ingenuity, timing, and adaptability. He countered the relic's energy dampening by redirecting his limit break into short, precise bursts, eventually overcoming the lieutenant in a brilliant display of skill. By the battle's end, the Shadow Sect's forces were repelled, but the cost was significant. The northern perimeter was damaged, several trainees injured, and the incident revealed the sect's growing ambition and cunning. Arahan Vale appeared on the battlefield, surveying the aftermath. "You have demonstrated true silver tier mastery," he said, his eyes reflecting a rare sense of approval. "But understand this, the challenges ahead will dwarf this trial. Gold tier awaits, and with it, threats beyond imagination." In the days that followed, Kairos, Leora, and Arindor began preparation for gold tier trials. Their training intensified, focusing on advanced limit break techniques, strategic combat, and understanding ancient ascension relics. The trio explored hidden archives within Obsidian Gate, discovering fragments of ancient texts describing gold tier ascendants who could manipulate spiritual energy to reshape reality. Kairos felt both awe and apprehension. The path to gold tier was not just about strength, it required understanding, discipline, and insight into powers that could alter life itself. Yet he was determined. Every scar, every battle, every failure and victory had prepared him for this moment. Even as he trained, a shadow loomed. Veyros Malvin's presence was increasingly felt, orchestrating attacks and manipulations from the darkness. His agents infiltrated territories, gathering intelligence, corrupting relics, and testing Kairos's limits from afar. The stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge everything Kairos had learned. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kairos stood atop Obsidian Gate with Leora and Arindor. The wind carried the scent of distant forests and mountains, whispering promises of trials yet to come. Kairos clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of his limit break beneath his skin. "Gold tier, I will reach it," he vowed. "No matter what stands in my way." In the shadows beyond the gate, Veyros Malvin smiled cruelly, his eyes glinting with anticipation. The boy rises, but he has yet to face the true storm. When the time comes, all he holds dear will be tested, and only then will the shadow reveal its full power. The horizon stretched endlessly before Kairos, a tapestry of mountains, forests, and distant lands, each holding challenges, enemies, and mysteries. Yet for the first time, he felt ready, not just to fight, but to rise. Beyond limits, beyond fear, beyond the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. The journey was far from over, but the first chapter of his true ascension was complete. The weeks after the northern perimeter battle passed quickly, yet they felt heavier than any prior challenge. Kairos, Leora, and Arindor trained relentlessly, their bodies and spirits pushed to the limits. Obsidian Gate had begun preparations for the Gold Tier Ascension Trials, a legendary test only attempted by those who had mastered Silver Tier strength and discipline. These trials were said to grant insight into powers that could alter reality, reshape spiritual energy, and awaken latent abilities beyond imagination. Kairos stood on the gate's highest spire, gazing at the horizon where the first golden rays of dawn cut through the clouds. "Gold Tier, it feels impossible," he muttered, clenching his fists. Yet beneath the doubt burned a quiet determination. Every battle, every scar, every lesson from Arahan, Leora, and Arindor had prepared him for this moment. Leora's voice broke through the morning wind. "Impossible doesn't exist, Kairos. You've seen what we've done together. And we've barely scratched the surface." Her phantom veil shimmered as she adjusted her stance, ready for any challenge. "The Gold Tier trials will test more than strength. They'll test your heart, mind, and spirit. Don't underestimate it." Their first trial took them to the Celestial Plateau, a floating mountain plateau surrounded by clouds that obscured everything beyond a few meters. Ancient inscriptions along the stone paths spoke of past ascendants, heroes whose limit breaks had shaped entire regions. The plateau itself was alive with energy, its very air thick with spiritual resonance that amplified abilities but also magnified mistakes. Kairos's first task was to synchronize his limit break with the environment, a test of control, focus, and spiritual awareness. The plateau reacted to his energy pulses, forming shifting platforms and elemental obstacles that required precise timing and technique to navigate. Each misstep caused energy feedback, draining stamina and testing concentration. Leora and Arindor followed closely, coordinating their movements to maintain balance, defend against energy distortions, and solve environmental challenges. Hours stretched into days as they faced trials of balance, energy control, and strategic foresight. Kairos learned to channel his limit break in new ways, short bursts to stabilize platforms, energy shields to block elemental surges, and focused strikes to harmonize the spiritual resonance of the plateau itself. By the end, he felt an unprecedented connection to his limit break, as if it were not a weapon, but a natural extension of his body and spirit. Yet even as they celebrated this victory, subtle tremors in the plateau hinted at an unseen threat. The energy here was older, more unpredictable, and Kairos sensed that this trial was only the beginning of a series designed not just to test skill, but to reveal hidden truths about ascension itself. Arahan Vale appeared in a spectral form, his presence both calming and commanding. "You have passed the initial synchronization test," he said. "But gold-tier trials are as much about understanding yourself as they are about power. Expect challenges that will confront your fears, your doubts, and even your allies. Only by overcoming them will you ascend further." Meanwhile, Veyros Malvin continued his shadowy manipulations. Across distant territories, his operatives secured relics, infiltrated minor gates, and experimented with forbidden limit break techniques. He had not forgotten Kairos. The boy's rapid ascent intrigued and frustrated him in equal measure. "Interesting," Veyros murmured, watching from the void between realms. "The ascendant rises, but will he survive the storm I am preparing?" Kairos, unaware of these dark machinations, focused on the task before him. Gold tier awaited, a world of power, danger, and mysteries beyond his comprehension. Yet he felt ready, not merely to fight, but to master, to understand, and to rise. With Leora and Arindor by his side, he stepped into the next trial, the golden sunlight washing over the floating plateau, carrying with it the promise of trials, victories, and the shadow of a storm yet to come. After mastering the initial synchronization test on the celestial plateau, Kairos, Leora, and Arindor were guided by spectral markers to the next stage, the Hall of Celestial Guardians, a vast chamber floating in the clouds, suspended by invisible spiritual currents. Ancient guardians, massive constructs infused with the essence of long-departed ascendants, stood vigil, their eyes glowing with ethereal light. Each guardian represented a facet of ascension, strength, wisdom, patience, and harmony. Arahan Vale's voice echoed from nowhere. "These guardians will test not only your power, but your judgment. Each one challenges a different aspect of your limit break, your mind, and your soul. Only by understanding their nature can you proceed." Kairos stepped forward, feeling the energy of his limit break surge in response to the guardian's presence. The first guardian, Titanus of Strength, erupted with a shockwave that knocked the trio off their feet. Its massive fists reshaped the floating platforms beneath them, forcing Kairos to channel precise bursts of energy to stabilize the terrain while countering attacks. Leora darted between the gaps, striking at weak points, while Arindor reinforced platforms and redirected energy surges with calculated barriers. The battle tested every skill they had learned. Kairos discovered he could temporarily merge his limit break's energy with the environment, using the floating stone as a weapon as well as a shield. He struck with precision, learning that raw power alone could not topple Titanus. Strategy and synergy were essential. As the guardian fell, another emerged, Solera of Wisdom, a construct of shifting light and mirrors. It distorted perception, forcing Kairos to distinguish between reality and illusion. Every attack reflected or refracted unpredictably, requiring him to anticipate movements and strike at the correct timing. Here, Kairos learned the subtlety of his limit break, not just as a force, but as a tool for perception and adaptation. The trials continued. Orion of Patience, whose attacks grew stronger the more Kairos rushed, forcing him to pace himself and meditate mid-battle, and Harmonia of Harmony, a guardian whose synchronized attacks required Kairos, Leora, and Arindor to perfectly coordinate every movement. These battles were grueling, testing stamina, mental focus, and teamwork at an intensity Kairos had never faced. By the time the final guardian's energy dissipated, Kairos felt transformed. His limit break had evolved into a multi-layered technique, precise, adaptive, and harmonized with both his mind and the environment. Leora's phantom veil became almost inseparable from Kairos's attacks, while Arindor's defensive techniques allowed them to overcome challenges that would have been impossible alone. But even in victory, unease lingered. Kairos sensed the presence of Veyros Malvin's agents, watching from the shadows between realms. The guardians had tested his strength, wisdom, patience, and harmony, but Veyros's trials would be far darker, designed to push him to his limits not only physically but morally. After completing the Hall of Celestial Guardians, the trio returned to Obsidian Gate to rest and analyze the experience. The gate masters were visibly impressed. You have surpassed expectations, Arahan Vale remarked. But understand this, gold tier is not the pinnacle. What you have learned is only a fraction of the potential power and knowledge you must master. The true ascension lies beyond what you can currently perceive. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Kairos looked at his hands, feeling the steady hum of energy beneath his skin. Gold tier is more than power, he said quietly. It's understanding, control, and responsibility. I can't afford mistakes. Leora rested a hand on his shoulder, her expression unreadable. And you won't be alone. But remember, the stronger you become, the more dangerous the enemies you face will be. There are forces beyond even the gate that watch us, and they will not hesitate. Far beyond the known territories, in a hidden fortress bathed in shadow, Veyros Malvin observed the trio. So the boy has grown, he mused, eyes narrowing. Strong, clever, and dangerously ambitious. The storm of shadows approaches, and when it strikes, all he has built will be tested. Let the next stage begin. The Hall of Celestial Guardians had tested Kairos's mind, spirit, and mastery of his limit break, but it did not prepare him for the living threat that awaited outside the gate. Obsidian Gate had received intelligence that a gold-tier shadow sect operative, known only as Nerith the Voidblade, had infiltrated the nearby Ascension territory to seize relics and destabilize the region. Kairos, Leora, and Arindor were dispatched immediately, their limit breaks refined and sharpened from the Celestial Plateau trials. The air around them thrummed with spiritual energy, heavier than anything they had previously experienced. Every step toward the enemy's location felt like stepping into a storm of raw potential power. The first encounter was sudden. Nerith appeared atop a ridge, cloaked in black energy that seemed to devour light. His weapon, a curved blade infused with corrupted spiritual energy, sliced through the air, leaving streaks of shadow that lingered unnaturally. The landscape trembled with each strike, forcing Kairos to react instantly. Kairos charged, his limit break flowing with precision, striking with bursts of energy that Nerith narrowly blocked. Leora vanished into the shadows, attempting a flank, while Arindor projected energy barriers to protect against Nerith's destructive swings. The battle was faster, deadlier, and more unpredictable than anything Kairos had faced in silver-tier combat. Nerith's techniques were designed to counter limit breaks, forcing Kairos to adapt quickly. He learned to break his limit break into smaller, controlled pulses, redirecting energy to exploit openings rather than overwhelming force. Each strike, dodge, and block became a lesson in observation, anticipation, and instinct. During a brief pause in the combat, Kairos caught sight of Nerith's eyes, cold, calculating, and full of contempt. This is more than just a fight, Kairos realized. This is a test of everything I have learned, and then some. The battle raged across cliffs, valleys, and forests, each environment altering the flow of spiritual energy. Kairos discovered new applications for his limit break, combining offensive bursts with terrain manipulation, creating energy paths to redirect Nerith's attacks, and synchronizing with Leora and Arindor for rapid, coordinated strikes. Despite their teamwork, Nerith proved formidable. At one point, he forced Kairos into a narrow canyon, nullifying the trio's coordinated attacks. Shadows coalesced, forming blades and spikes that pierced the ground and sky alike. Kairos, breathing heavily, tapped into a deeper layer of his limit break, a harmonization with the spiritual energy of the canyon itself. Stones levitated, energy arcs formed protective barriers, and he struck with precision that shattered Nerith's defenses. Finally, with a combination of skill, strategy, and unwavering determination, Kairos executed a focused limit break strike that destabilized Nerith's corrupted energy core. The operative staggered, giving Leora and Arindor the opening to finish the engagement, forcing Nerith to retreat into the shadows. Exhausted but victorious, Kairos surveyed the battlefield. The encounter had revealed the true nature of gold-tier combat. It was not merely about strength or coordination, it was about understanding the enemy, the environment, and one's own limit break at a fundamental level. Back at Obsidian Gate, Arahan Vale addressed the trio. You have faced a true gold-tier opponent and survived. Take note, this is only the beginning. Enemies will continue to rise, and the trials of gold-tier extend beyond combat. Knowledge, foresight, and control are as important as raw power. Nerith was a warning, the Shadow Sect has greater plans, and you must be ready. Even as Kairos trained and recovered, the shadow of Veyros Malvin loomed larger. His agents continued to infiltrate distant territories, gather forbidden relics, and experiment with corrupted limit break techniques. It was clear that Nerith was only the first wave of a calculated campaign against Ascendants. One night, Kairos stood atop a cliff overlooking the moonlit valley. Leora and Arindor beside him, he clenched his fists, feeling the pulse of his limit break resonating through the earth. Gold tier isn't just a trial, he said quietly. It's a battlefield, and I will rise beyond every limit, no matter the enemy. From the shadows, Veyros Malvin watched, a cruel smile on his lips. The boy grows stronger, he whispered. But soon, the storm I have prepared will test him in ways he cannot yet imagine. Let the game of shadows begin. The aftermath of the battle with Nerith left Kairos, Leora, and Arindor both exhausted and more determined than ever. Reports from Obsidian Gate indicated that the Shadow Sect had begun a coordinated search for forbidden relics, artifacts capable of bending the flow of spiritual energy in unnatural ways. These relics, long thought sealed or lost, were now being exploited to create gold-tier threats beyond normal comprehension. Arahan Vale summoned the trio to a secret chamber within Obsidian Gate. Ancient murals covered the walls, depicting ascendants who had mastered energies beyond even gold tier. In the center, a holographic map displayed the locations of several active relics. 3 of these relics have been targeted by the Shadow Sect, Arahan said, pointing to glowing markers. If they succeed in retrieving and corrupting them, they could create limit breaks powerful enough to destabilize entire Ascension territories. You must recover them before they fall into enemy hands. Their first mission led them to the ruins of Arindor, a vast, half-sunken city filled with spiritual resonance. Here, the relic known as the Scepter of Velfire was rumored to be sealed. The ruins were alive with residual energy, causing unstable bursts of spiritual power. Every step felt like walking on the edge of a blade. Kairos felt his limit break surge instinctively. The scepter's energy resonated with him, but it was unstable, almost conscious, testing his control. Leora scouted ahead, using her phantom veil to detect traps and hidden sect operatives. Arindor created defensive barriers to neutralize unstable energy bursts, his calm calculations keeping them from being overwhelmed. In the central chamber of the ruins, they encountered Nerith again, this time accompanied by a cadre of Shadow Sect operatives. The scepter's energy amplified his attacks, each strike of his void blade creating ripples of corrupted energy that warped the environment. Kairos had to think differently. Raw power alone would not succeed here. He synchronized with the scepter's energy, using controlled bursts to stabilize the chamber and counteract the corrupted waves. Leora struck from the shadows, dismantling Nerith's support operatives, while Arindor reinforced their positions with energy barriers that deflected destructive blasts. The battle stretched for hours. Kairos discovered new applications for his limit break, forming temporary energy conduits to redirect destructive energy, using the environment as both shield and weapon, and harmonizing his bursts with the scepter to neutralize Nerith's power. Finally, with a coordinated strike, the trio subdued Nerith. Kairos channeled a refined limit break pulse, stabilizing the scepter and preventing it from being corrupted. The relic hovered, recognizing his mastery and control. As they prepared to leave, a hidden chamber beneath the ruins revealed ancient inscriptions, fragments of knowledge about ascendants who had transcended gold tier, wielding powers that could reshape entire regions. Kairos realized that the path ahead was more complex than mere combat. Understanding, restraint, and insight into the relics themselves would be as critical as any battle. Back at Obsidian Gate, Arahan Vale addressed the trio. You have stabilized the scepter, but understand this, the Shadow Sect's ambitions extend far beyond this mission. Their aim is to manipulate relics to ascend beyond gold tier themselves. Your limit breaks must evolve in ways you cannot yet imagine, and the next challenges will push both your skill and your understanding of ascension to the limits. Kairos, holding the scepter carefully, felt a pulse of energy. Gold tier is only the beginning, he murmured. If the Shadow Sect seeks to surpass it, we'll have to rise beyond even that. I won't let them succeed. In the shadows, Veyros Malvin observed the retrieval from afar. A cruel smile twisted his lips. The boy grows clever, but cleverness alone will not save him. Soon, I will force him to confront truths he is not ready to face. The Ascension storm approaches, and his resolve will be tested like never before. With the Scepter of Velfire secured, Kairos, Leora, and Arindor delved deeper into the knowledge hidden within Obsidian Gate. Ancient archives, previously sealed to even silver tier ascendants, were now open to them. These archives contained records of ascendants who had transcended gold tier, individuals who had mastered not just raw power but the flow of spiritual energy itself, bending it to reshape landscapes, heal catastrophic damage, or even alter the threads of fate. Kairos spent long nights studying the inscriptions, practicing techniques described in fragments of the texts. He discovered that limit breaks were more than bursts of energy, they were conduits of one's essence, and true mastery required harmony with the environment, understanding of spiritual currents, and the ability to anticipate reactions from both living and non-living entities. Leora experimented alongside him, blending her phantom veil with energy harmonics described in the archives. She discovered a new technique, shadow resonance, allowing her to momentarily synchronize with Kyrus's limit break, amplifying both their abilities in perfect unison. Arindor, ever methodical, analyzed patterns and developed strategies to coordinate with multiple allies simultaneously, preparing them for battles against overwhelming odds. However, their study and practice were interrupted by intelligence reports. The Shadow Sect had launched a coordinated strike on multiple Ascension territories, capturing minor relics and destabilizing defenses. It was clear that Nerith had not acted alone, the Shadow Sect's ambitions were accelerating. Kyrus led a rapid response, traveling to the Stormgate Plateau, a strategic Ascension outpost under siege. The battle was unlike any previous encounter. Multiple Shadow Sect elite operatives had converged, each wielding relic-enhanced limit breaks capable of tearing through standard defenses. Kyrus, Leora, and Arindor faced simultaneous attacks, requiring them to use every technique they had refined and every lesson from the Ascendant archives. Kyrus discovered a new application of his limit break, temporal pulse, a method to slightly accelerate or decelerate his perception and reaction time relative to the battlefield. This allowed him to anticipate and counter multiple attacks at once, giving his team a crucial edge. Leora's shadow resonance amplified this, enabling coordinated multi-angle assaults, while Arindor's barriers manipulated the battlefield's energy flows, redirecting destructive attacks and protecting civilians caught in the crossfire. After hours of relentless combat, the Shadow Sect's forces were repelled, but not without cost. Entire sections of the plateau were ravaged, and several elite operatives escaped, hinting at even larger threats ahead. Kyrus realized that Gold Tier mastery was only the beginning. The Shadow Sect sought a power beyond Gold Tier, and his team had to prepare for challenges far beyond what they had faced so far. That night, Kyrus stood on the edge of the plateau, staring at the distant horizon. "Every step forward reveals more danger," he said quietly. "If they're chasing powers beyond Gold Tier, we'll need to rise beyond even that. I can't allow them to succeed." Leora's voice was calm but firm. "We've come this far together, Kyrus. We can overcome anything, but the next trials will test more than strength. They'll test our judgment, our limits, and even the bonds we've forged." Arindor added, "Knowledge and mastery must accompany power. The Ascendants who transcended Gold Tier did not rely on brute force, they understood everything around them, from spiritual currents to the motives of their enemies. That is what we must achieve." In the shadows of the distant mountains, Veyros Malvin observed the battlefield with interest. His plans were unfolding perfectly, drawing Kyrus deeper into the challenges he had orchestrated. "The boy grows," he whispered. "But soon, he will face truths he cannot yet comprehend. And when that storm arrives, all his power, all his knowledge, will be tested to the breaking point." Kyrus clenched his fists, the hum of his limit break resonating with the ground beneath him. "Then let the storm come. I will rise beyond every limit, and protect everything we've built." The reports were clear. Veyros Malvin had deployed his elite forces, operatives whose abilities rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, known Gold Tier Ascendants. These elite agents were not merely skilled, they were strategic, adaptive, and wielded relics that could manipulate reality in localized zones. The threat was unprecedented. Kyrus, Leora, and Arindor prepared for deployment. Their training from the Hall of Celestial Guardians and the knowledge gained from ancient Ascendant archives had sharpened them, but this mission demanded more than skill, it demanded creativity, coordination, and courage. The battlefield was a shattered city in the Midnight Expanse, a region warped by rogue spiritual energy. Entire blocks floated above the ground, suspended by unstable currents of power. Shadows moved independently, striking unpredictably, and the sky pulsed with chaotic energy. It was a realm tailor-made for Veyros's elite operatives. The first encounter came swiftly. Kleros, the shard blade, emerged from the floating debris. His blade could split and reform midair, creating multiple energy projections that moved independently. Kyrus realized that traditional limit break attacks would be insufficient, he needed to harmonize his energy with the battlefield itself. Using temporal pulse, Kyrus accelerated his perception, anticipating each strike. He combined it with shadow resonance, allowing Leora's movements to perfectly synchronize with his. Together, they struck Cleros's projections, dismantling the illusions while Arindor stabilized the floating platforms to prevent catastrophic collapse. Despite their coordinated assault, Cleros countered with a new technique, fractured spatial blades that bent energy around him, forcing Kairos to adapt on the fly. Every attack had to be calculated, every movement precise. Kairos discovered a new layer of his limit break, energy harmonization, where he could temporarily link his energy with the ambient spiritual currents of the battlefield, amplifying both offense and defense while stabilizing the environment itself. After a grueling battle, Cleros was subdued, but not captured. The operative retreated into the chaos, leaving behind signs of a larger army orchestrated by Veyros Malvin. The city itself became the next challenge. Rogue spiritual energy surged unpredictably, destabilizing platforms and creating deadly environmental hazards. Kairos realized that Veyros's plan was not just to attack, they were being forced to survive in a reality shaped to test their limits. As they advanced, Arindor discovered an ancient relic embedded in the core of the city, a crystal pulsating with gold-tier energy. The relic seemed alive, responding to Kairos's limit break harmonization. They realized it could either stabilize the chaotic energy of the city or, if misused, amplify it, turning the battlefield into an unmanageable storm. Kairos and the team coordinated their approach. He merged his limit break with the relic's energy, stabilizing floating debris and neutralizing some of the chaos. Leora's shadow resonance amplified this, allowing precise control over the unstable platforms, while Arindor maintained protective barriers and redirected rogue energy surges. Even after regaining partial control of the city, the threat was far from over. Veyros Malvin's elite forces had deeper plans. Kairos felt the presence of an even more dangerous operative lurking in the shadows, one who could rival his limit break and exploit the relic's power for devastating effects. That night, atop the stabilized section of the city, Kairos addressed his team. "We've survived the first wave, but this is only the beginning. Veyros is testing us, pushing us to adapt. We need to rise faster, strike harder, and understand the true potential of our limit breaks, or we will lose more than battles, we'll lose control of the ascension itself." In the darkness beyond the city, Veyros Malvin watched, his eyes glinting with anticipation. They believe they are prepared. They have yet to see the elite fully unleashed, and when the time comes, the storm will not merely test them, it will consume everything they hold dear. The calm after stabilizing parts of the midnight expanse was deceptive. Kairos sensed a lingering presence, one that resonated with the relic at the city's core. This was no ordinary elite operative. This was Veyron, the relic warden, a gold-tier ascendant whose mastery over relic energy rivaled even ancient records. As Kairos, Leora, and Arindor advanced, the sky darkened unnaturally, torn by arcs of unstable energy. From the center of the city rose Veyron, his armor gleaming with a spectral aura, relic fragments embedded in his gauntlets and shoulders. His voice echoed, distorted by the chaotic energy. "You dare stabilize what I have perfected? You will learn the cost of defiance." The battle began immediately. Veyron's attacks were multifaceted, combining high-speed strikes with waves of energy that could bend reality itself in localized zones. Platforms collapsed under the pressure of his attacks, and rogue energy streaked through the air unpredictably. Kairos realized that conventional limit break techniques were insufficient. He needed symphony with the relic itself, something beyond even energy harmonization. Kairos tapped deeper into the relic's energy, feeling its pulse resonate with his own. For the first time, he unlocked Ascendant Flow, a technique that allowed him to merge his limit break fully with ambient relic energy, synchronizing every strike with the spiritual currents of the battlefield. Leora's shadow resonance amplified the synchronization, letting her and Kairos strike as a single entity. Arindor maintained tactical control, redirecting energy bursts and stabilizing platforms to prevent catastrophic collapse. The trio fought as one, turning the battlefield's chaos to their advantage. Veyron adapted quickly. He split his energy into multiple spectral projections, forcing Kairos to anticipate attacks in several dimensions simultaneously. For hours, they battled in a deadly dance, each push and counter-strike a test of skill, strategy, and understanding of both power and environment. During a critical moment, Kairos sensed a weakness. Veyron's connection to the relic was immense but unstable. With precise timing, he channeled a controlled pulse through Ascendant Flow, destabilizing Veyron's synchronization with the relic. Leora struck in perfect unison, breaking his spectral defenses, while Arindor reinforced the collapsing platforms. Veyron staggered but was not defeated. Before they could press further, He activated a hidden mechanism in the relic, creating a temporal rift that pulled him and a portion of the city into a shadowy dimension. "This is far from over," Veyron shouted. "You have not seen the limits of power." Kairos, though exhausted, realized the implication. Veyron had escaped to train and strategize further, likely seeking ways to harness even greater relic energies. The battle had been a test, not just of skill but of patience, foresight, and restraint. Back at Obsidian Gate, Arahan Vale spoke gravely. Veyron's escape was expected. He will return stronger, and his mastery over relic energy will be formidable. But you have learned something invaluable today. True ascension is not merely power, but understanding, control, and synchronization with forces beyond your own. Kairos held the scepter of Velfire, feeling its pulse resonate with his limit break. "Gold tier is no longer enough," he said quietly. "The Shadow Sect seeks to surpass it, and we will need to rise beyond even that. I will not allow relics, power, or the ascension itself to fall into their hands." From the void between realms, Veyros Malvin observed. A faint smile played across his lips. "The boy grows, but he does not yet comprehend the storm I have prepared. Soon, every lesson, every battle, will lead to a choice that could change the very fate of ascension. Let the real trials begin." Veyron's escape through the temporal rift left Kairos, Leora, and Arindor standing amid the partially stabilized remnants of the midnight expanse. The city was scarred, floating debris hung precariously in the air, and the energy of the relic thrummed faintly, as if mourning the disturbance. Arahan Vale summoned the trio immediately. Veyron has retreated into the shadow dimension, a realm existing outside normal flow of time and space. It is a crucible where only the most adaptable and perceptive ascendants can survive. If he strengthens himself there, he may return with power beyond gold tier. You must follow him, carefully. The portal to the shadow dimension shimmered like liquid obsidian. Kairos stepped forward first, feeling the hum of his limit break resonate with the strange energy of the rift. Leora and Arindor followed, their combined energies creating a stabilizing anchor as they crossed over. The shadow dimension was unlike any place Kairos had seen. Landscapes shifted constantly. Mountains folded into rivers, skies bled into forests, and gravity twisted unpredictably. Spiritual energy pulsed in strange rhythms, requiring constant adjustment to limit breaks and synchronization between the trio. Veyron awaited them atop a floating spire of dark crystal, his aura stronger than before, tinged with energy drawn from the shadow dimension itself. "Welcome," he said, voice echoing unnaturally. "Here, your limit breaks will be tested not by enemies alone, but by the very world around you. Only those who can bend themselves to the dimension will survive." The battle began immediately. Veyron manipulated the dimension's unstable terrain, creating illusions, shifting gravity, and warping energy flows. Kairos had to adapt his ascendant flow continuously, merging his limit break with the chaotic energy around him while maintaining coordination with Leora and Arindor. As the fight progressed, Kairos realized that the shadow dimension amplified traits beyond power. Fear, hesitation, and doubt could manifest physically, creating spectral challenges that mirrored the mind of the ascendant. Leora faced phantasms of her past failures, Arindor was challenged by simulations of tactical errors, and Kairos confronted his deepest doubts. Could he truly protect everyone, even if he transcended gold tier? Through focus, synchronization, and innovation, the trio overcame the phantasmal trials, their limit breaks growing in power and precision. Kairos discovered an evolution of ascendant flow, harmonic ascension, a technique that allowed him to synchronize not only with relics or terrain but with spiritual currents generated by thought, emotion, and intention itself. Using harmonic ascension, Kairos, Leora, and Arindor pushed Veyron back, destabilizing his connection to the relic fragments embedded in his body. The battle reached its peak when Veyron, sensing imminent defeat, triggered a hidden device within the shadow dimension, opening a vortex that threatened to collapse the entire realm. Kairos, trusting in harmonic ascension, channeled every ounce of his limit break into stabilizing the vortex, Leora amplifying his focus through shadow resonance, and Arindor redirecting rogue energy currents. Together, they narrowly prevented the collapse, forcing Veyron to retreat further into an even darker corner of the dimension, leaving behind cryptic warnings. This is only the beginning, the ascension beyond gold tier is a path of no return. Exiting the shadow dimension, the trio returned to Obsidian Gate physically unharmed but forever changed. Their limit breaks had evolved beyond gold tier understanding, and Kairos realized that transcending gold tier would require not only power but moral clarity, mastery of self, and harmony with forces few could comprehend. In the distance, Veyros Malvin observed through interdimensional surveillance. The boy is learning, faster than expected, he murmured. But the storm I am preparing will not allow him the luxury of calm reflection. The ascension ladder extends far beyond what he imagines, and soon, every choice will carry consequences beyond his comprehension. Kairos looked to his friends, hands glowing with residual energy. Gold tier is only the threshold. Beyond this, the real battle begins. Back at Obsidian Gate, the aftermath of the Shadow Dimension battle left Kairos, Leora, and Arindor exhausted but more determined than ever. News from other Ascension territories was dire. The Shadow Sect had launched coordinated strikes on multiple fronts, capturing relics, destabilizing regions, and recruiting rogue ascendants. Veyros Malvin's strategy was no longer covert, it was an all-out test of the Ascendant Order's readiness. Arahan Vale convened a council of top ascendants. The Shadow Sect's objective is clear, they seek not just power, but control over the Ascension hierarchy itself. Their elite forces are testing limits, gathering relics, and preparing for something far greater. Kairos, Leora, Arindor, you have been through the Shadow Dimension and returned stronger. You will lead the first counteroffensive. The mission: infiltrate the Shadow Sect's hidden fortress, known only as the Obsidian Spire, and recover at least 2 of the most dangerous relics in their possession. The fortress was heavily guarded, its energy signatures pulsating with stolen gold tier and possibly higher tier power. As the trio approached, Kairos felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Every step into the fortress was a test, not just of strength, but of judgment. Shadow traps, illusions, and corrupted energy fields challenged them at every turn. Leora's shadow resonance allowed them to move in perfect unison, neutralizing traps and avoiding ambushes. Arindor projected energy conduits, stabilizing rogue currents while maintaining defensive coverage. Deep within the fortress, they encountered a new elite operative, Sereth, the Mirror of Shadows, a being capable of replicating limit breaks and even amplifying them. Sereth challenged Kairos directly, creating duplicates of his limit break attacks in rapid succession. Kairos realized that raw power alone would be futile, he had to outthink Sereth, using harmonic ascension to differentiate his original energy from the copies, exploiting subtle fluctuations in timing, emotion, and intent. The battle was fierce. Sereth's mirrored attacks threatened to overwhelm them, forcing Kairos to push harmonic ascension further, merging not just with the environment but with the latent spiritual energy of Leora and Arindor. Together, the trio formed a triad of synchronized energy, breaking Sereth's mirrored assaults and destabilizing the operative's connection to the fortress's energy systems. Victory was temporary. The fortress itself began to collapse under the strain of destabilized relic energy, and a hidden chamber was revealed, a vast collection of forbidden relics, some glowing with a power Kairos could barely comprehend. Among them was a device pulsing with Veyros Malvin's signature energy, a relic capable of amplifying limit breaks to unpredictable degrees, a clear sign of the Shadow Sect's ultimate plan. Kairos realized that retrieving these relics was not enough. They needed to understand their implications, their dangers, and how to control, or destroy, them without causing catastrophic fallout. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. Gold tier mastery, the Shadow Dimension, and now transcendent relics demanded wisdom, foresight, and restraint. As the trio exited the collapsing fortress, Veyros Malvin's voice echoed across the distance, carried by spiritual currents. The boy grows, but he is still untested. Soon, he will face choices that no limit break can prepare him for. The storm I have orchestrated is only beginning, and every step will lead him closer to truths he may not survive. Kairos looked to Leora and Arindor, the pulse of their combined energy resonating through him. We've faced the impossible and survived, he said quietly. But the real challenge, the one that will define Ascension itself, is coming. Whatever Veyros has planned, we will rise. And we will not fail. The Obsidian Spire loomed before Kairos, Leora, and Arindor like a monument of shadow and power. The relics they had recovered from the fortress pulsed faintly, resonating with Kairos's limit break in ways he could barely comprehend. Each pulse was a whisper of untapped energy, a promise of both incredible strength and immeasurable danger. As they approached the central chamber, the air thickened with spiritual energy. Veyros Malvin's presence was unmistakable, radiating through every corner of the fortress. So, you've come this far, his voice echoed, smooth and chilling. But you are still children playing at godhood. The storm I have prepared will reveal whether you are worthy of Ascension itself. From the shadows emerged Veyros's elite cadre, operatives each armed with relics and techniques designed to push gold tier limit breaks to the breaking point. At their center stood Sereth and Veyron, both having recovered from previous defeats, their energy now amplified by the fortress's core relics. The battle erupted instantly. Kairos unleashed Harmonic Ascension, merging with Leora and Arindor's energies to stabilize the fluctuating battlefield. Leora's shadow resonance allowed her to anticipate and synchronize with every movement, while Arindor manipulated environmental energy currents to redirect destructive waves and protect their path forward. Veyron launched an assault that twisted gravity and warped the battlefield, forcing Kairos to apply energy harmonization at its limit, redirecting spatial energy to maintain footing and avoid collapse. Sereth replicated their limit breaks, creating a constant, chaotic feedback that threatened to overload their powers. Kairos realized brute force would not suffice. He needed insight, strategy, and control. Focusing deeply, he pushed Harmonic Ascension to a new level, Resonant Ascension, allowing him to anticipate not only attacks but the very flow of spiritual energy, adjusting in real time to counter, stabilize, and redirect destructive forces. Leora's resonance amplified this further, while Arindor's tactical mastery coordinated every environmental element and energy flow. For hours, the battle raged, the fortress shaking under the combined energies. Kairos finally targeted Veyros's focal point, the massive relic amplifying his elite's abilities. With precise timing, he channeled a coordinated pulse through Resonant Ascension, destabilizing the relic while simultaneously neutralizing Sereth and Veyron's amplified attacks. Veyros Malvin himself did not engage directly but watched with detached amusement. Impressive, but the storm has only begun. You have survived this trial, but the paths beyond Gold Tier are fraught with consequences even you cannot imagine. With the fortress destabilized, the trio evacuated, taking the recovered relics with them. The Obsidian spire collapsed behind them, leaving only whispers of energy in its wake. Despite their victory, the sense of unease remained. Veyros's plan was not complete, and hints of ascension tiers beyond gold lingered in his ominous words. Back at Obsidian Gate, the team reflected on the events. Kairos held the scepter of Velfire, feeling its pulse resonate with the memories of the Shadow Dimension and the Obsidian Spire. We've grown stronger, but the challenges ahead, they will demand more than skill or power. They will demand wisdom, judgment, and courage beyond anything we've faced. Leora nodded, her eyes distant. Veyros wants to push us to our limits. Whatever comes next, we have to be ready, not just to fight, but to understand the responsibilities of power. Arindor, always pragmatic, added, and the ascension itself will change because of this. Every relic, every limit break, every decision, will shape the future. We can only hope we are prepared. In a hidden chamber far away, Veyros Malvin smiled, the glow of unknown relics surrounding him. They have learned to fight, to resist, to survive, but the ascension storm has only just begun. Soon, they will face truths that will question everything they know, everything they believe. And when that time comes, the real game begins. The air at Obsidian Gate was thick with tension. After the events of the Obsidian Spire, Kairos, Leora, and Arindor had grown stronger, but the Shadow Sect's threats loomed larger than ever. Veyros Malvin's words echoed in Kairos's mind, the ascension storm has only just begun. The true challenge of transcending Gold Tier awaited. Reports from the front lines indicated that relic disturbances were multiplying. Entire territories were experiencing fluctuations in spiritual energy, some so severe that Gold Tier limit breaks were struggling to maintain stability. Veyros's plan was no longer about individual battles, it was restructuring the very flow of ascendant power across the world.